At the end of the day, sometimes you need your best players to be your best players, and Miro Heiskanen certainly was. A 3-point night as the Stars take down the Detroit Red Wings by a final score of 6-3. And how about the defense with an offensive display? And now they get a much-needed rest. That's next on Locked On Stars.
Your Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans, and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm Joey Erickson, former producer 105.3 The Fan and play-by-play voice of the Chippewa Steel. Be sure to subscribe. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. And as always, thank you so much for making us a part of your day and making us your first listen. Hockey is fun again, Stars fans, as the Dallas Stars take down the Detroit Red Wings by a final score of 6-3 in a very solid game. They really needed a good effort against a Red Wings team that played them very tough. They gave them all they could handle, and it was a tough spot. They were missing Dylan Larkin, their captain, Perron to a suspension, so they had to bring up 3 new guys, and I think the score was a bit deceiving because it was a lot closer than that, but either way, Stars get the job done, which is the most important thing at the end of the day. And the defense had a big night, and we're certainly going to touch on why the Stars desperately need more out of their back end, and they have a few days to rest before taking on Ottawa on Friday. We'll jump into this one, but first, today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. So sometimes your best players just have to be the best. And I thought that was kind of the theme of last night's victory. Miro Heiskanen was so good in all 3 zones. He picked up a goal on the power play, which he desperately needed. I think he hasn't scored since the 3rd game of the season against Anaheim. And he had a couple chances before that where he hit the pipe. Nice to see him get one. Of course, he pots in the empty netter at the end, but a beautiful helper on the Pavelski goal too, which the Stars really needed at that time because Detroit cut the lead to 1. You're like, oh, here we go. Is Dallas going to be able to bear down? They get a power play opportunity, and then boom, like 6 seconds later, it's in the back of the net, which was a huge goal at the time for the Stars. And my word is just kind of solid. It wasn't great, but they did well enough to get the job done. They were much more connected in the game. Razor mentioned that on the broadcast, that it was just the first time everything kind of seemed in sync for, a few weeks, because they've just been loose and very leaky. And Otter had a nice bounce back game, made 27 saves and made a few more of those high level, stops that he had been missing before. And part of it is the Stars were much better in front of them. And it was another start too, where, the Stars are just dominating zone time, but they just can never get interior. They didn't have a shot to show for it when they were in the offensive zone for 6 minutes to begin the game. And the next thing you know, Detroit comes down the other way on an odd man rush. Looks like the Stars have it handled. And then boom, Sprong puts it in the back of your net. And you're like, here we go again, as it gets scored on first for the 5th straight game. But they were able to bounce back from there, and it was nice. Guys like the top line, and we mentioned it yesterday, they need to provide a spark, and I think they were consistently one of the best lines. The Duchene line was really good too, did not have as many shots to show for it, but Duchene with a goal, he had a big drought, so he needed to get off the schneid. Robo with a big-time goal, he's up to 9 on the season, just dusted off and then polished it upstairs, which was a beauty. A phenomenal pass by Lindell. And the defense in general, 7 points from the back end. And yeah, Miro had 3, but Lindell with a couple of points and a beautiful buzzer beater as he rang it off the pipe. Reimer wasn't very good for Detroit too. And that was probably why the Stars put up 6, because Reimer was just a bit funky on the night, but also the Stars did well to, get some shots through and create some havoc That was a good sign. And I thought they got really solid nights from a lot of guys. Lindell was great, as I mentioned. Hakanpaa with an assist too. Even Hanley, even though he took a couple of penalties, I'm interested to see what happens with him on Friday now, because Pete DeBoer's mentioned young defensemen have to be better at defending and not taking penalties. And that was part of the reason why Lundqvist has been a healthy scratch. Hanley took a few penalties on the night, and one came back to haunt the Stars, unfortunately. But again, Pavelski struck very, very quickly. Fourth line was really good, and I thought the Stars just had a better presence about them. There was just a bit juice up and down the lineup, kind of from the top into bottom. And they just seemed like they were building off of each shift. The fourth line would go out there and do some damage. And then you have the Duchene line come after. And then top line rolls out, and they're starting to get chances. And it was great to see Hintz kind of at full flight and just creating off the rush. They could be a lot better off the rush. They just don't seem to be clicking on all cylinders right now. But it was one of those games where, they had to kind of earn their way to the front of the net, and a lot of perimeter work. And as the game wore along, they just became too much. I mean, they were clearly the better team. You could certainly tell. And Detroit made it really close. I mean, you have to give them credit. At 5-on-5, I mean, Stars controlled the majority of possession. The Corsi for percentage was, high 60s in the second period. Scoring chances were 29-16 against the Red Wings, and the goals forward was 1.74. And they did just a really nice job of kind of just forcing the issue. Their forecheck was great in spots. Also, Detroit made some curious plays that just fed Dallas. and that was probably more than anything. Not all of it was Dallas just being great in some degree, because Detroit was a bit peculiar with their decisions too. I mean, just could not clear their zone. Stars got extra opportunities, like one after another, because Detroit was just feeding the Stars, which allowed them to, continue to grind and get fresh legs on against tired bodies, which certainly helped. But Detroit's still, a few years away, I think, from being a true contender. But at the same time, they're a playoff team right now, and they've had a great season. I mean, they're second in goals per game this year. That's a tough offense to defend against the Stars that haven't been able to stop anything at this point. So much needed. Sam Steele with a couple of points too. He's been playing very, very well. I've really liked his game. I thought he would be a fan favorite coming into the year rather quickly, and he's starting to take shape, man. He does a little bit of everything. He's on the PK, and he just has a little bit of that grit. His game score is the highest on the night, 2.73, and made a couple of excellent passes. He's been on a run of some beautiful helpers lately, and it was nice to see him have a good game too. Johnston and the Dadonov line was probably the one that didn't have as much action, you could say. Ben made some very curious plays. He was a bit lethargic at times. What are you doing, especially on the power play, trying to force some passes in some negative areas? But he did a lot more than for the game than his offensive numbers were going to show. I mean, he won 11 draws. Stars were great in the dots, 59%. They were 6 for 6 on the power play, which certainly helped them cash in a few times. So that was great to see him good on the face-off dots. Sagan didn't have a particularly great night in terms of getting scoring chances himself. He did set up a few guys, but he finished with no shots on the night, but he won 8 face-offs. I thought Duchene was, man, he was all over the place again. Just he's one of the few that can create offense for himself. It was great to see him get that tip in front too, but he had a couple of great A looks himself. Hit the pipe, I believe. He ended up with 4 shots on the night. Pavelski had 5, which led the way. And of course, his patented tip in front of the net to really seal things off. for Dallas. And, it got a bit bleak there when, the Stars had a power play in the third period and they couldn't do anything with it. Next thing you know, Detroit had a big push and they were coming in waves, as you would expect. And they get rewarded with a power play and they make it a 1-goal game. But Stars went back to work and they responded. I thought that was something to take out of it. A real nice positive to take away from the game was, not everything went their way and they were able to just steady the ship a bit better. It seems like things have been snowballing, and giving up a first goal like they did, you could just see that maybe it goes all over again. Like, here we go again. And then they pot another, and then you're playing catch up by 2 instead of 1. And they were able to, get the lead with a buzzer beater by Esa Lindell, and they came out in the second and just continued to keep the pressure on. So great sign from the Stars and a nice bounce back win. I thought Otter was good. 27 saves. He just made a couple of those really tough saves in tight, like on DeBrincat early in the game when Detroit had a couple of really nice looks, even though they weren't really dominating the play. He stopped a DeBrincat one-timer in tight, and he had a few on the power play, just, point blank. And he needed those. And you could see a little bit of that confidence. I think he's still a bit shaky in some areas, but you don't need him to be phenomenal every night. And that's where we're trying to get, where it's like his defense needs to help him out. He doesn't need to be a Vezina caliber goaltender night in and night out with the amount of time he's going to play. If the Stars can just be a smidge better in front of him, you're going to get better results, and he's going to have better play. And they did that in some spots, even though they're still a bit loose. And sometimes it's like they're there and they have it covered, but they still allow that shot. There was one in the first period where, 4 guys are back, and the puck's in the corner. I don't remember who had it for Detroit. And you have a guy in the soft spot, kind of in the middle of a box formation for the Stars. And that pass goes right to him around the right circle. And then he gets the shot away, and Otter has to make a stop. It's like, you're there. Like, they got to take those lanes away. And they, to their credit, did that, I thought, very well in the game. They got a lot of sticks on pucks, especially through the neutral zone when Detroit was a bit careless. And I think really helped hinder Detroit's rush, because that's what they really wanted to get going, was, making plays in space. And I thought the Stars did a great job of deterring that. But how about the offensive display from the Stars defense? And they need a bit more of that. And sometimes a great offense or a great defense is a great offense, as you say. I don't know if I messed up that cliche, but anyways, let's discuss that a bit more next. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by Sleeper. A new NHL season brings all sorts of possibilities. Wyatt Johnston could have 40 goals. Jason Robertson could have 50. But the Stars could hoist the Stanley Cup, and you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our #1 choice for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey. Because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick studs like your McDavids, your Ovechkins, even though he's having a tough goal scoring year, McKinnon's, and just record more or less on certain sleeper projections like goals, assists, saves, plus minus. Play it while you're doing the Stars game, and you could win 100 times your bets on Sleeper. You heard me correctly, Stars fans. If you correctly predict the outcome of 8-player stats, you could win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention, nail those picks, and you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL. And you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and with location availability. So the Stars defense combined for 7 points in the victory over the Detroit Red Wings, and the highest output by far of the season so far, at least on the back end, which is a great sign. And it's just a nice different dimension that the Stars can provide. And of course, at this point, you have to accept that they're just not going to be a strong defensive team and until we see it, right? We're almost 30 games into this thing. It just seems like that's what we're going to have to deal with until they get some help. But they can alleviate a lot of that pressure by having their guys on the back end just jump up into the play and make things happen. Lindell, I thought, has played a really great stretch too. During this really tough stretch in the last 2 weeks or so that the Stars have had, I thought Lindell has stepped up rather nicely. Of course, he has his moments, and at the end of the day, he's a bit limited in what he can do, especially when he's playing with Hakanpaa, but he's been very good on the PK, which continues to be great, even though their netminders probably have to be better. But he's added a little bit of that ability to kind of jump up in the rush more than I've seen in the past few seasons, at least to my eye. And had a nice goal, off the post against Reimer, but a great pass to find Robertson beneath the right circle for Robo's goal on the night. And guys like him and Hakanpaa that can chip in is huge. And they showed a stat on Bally last night too. The assist leaders in the month for the Stars, or maybe it was point leaders, Hakanpaa had 4, which at the end of the day is probably a really bad sign if Hakanpaa is leading your defense in scoring in a month. But it's still a good sign that he's at least doing something. You'd rather have Miro, of course, and he overtook him with a big 3-point night yesterday, but just even Hakanpaa's getting involved. Harley's been so good, man. He had one where he was dancing across the blue line and had a Red Wing right on his back, just kind of shrugs him off and was able to work a shot on that. He probably should have had a goal. He ended up drawing a penalty for Dallas at the time, but I mean, he continues to be impressive. His ceiling is so high. Man, it's so fun to watch him play. And now they're kind of using Miro and Harley in a similar degree where they're just kind of pairing them with anybody at this point. Like, who cares? It's whoever plays with whoever at this point, and they have to do it. I've liked that he's playing more minutes too. I think he just played 18 last night. Heiskanen was up to 25. No, excuse me. Harley played 20. And Suter was up there to 22, but they're finding ways to get Harley more minutes, which is a great sign. And he's so good in his own zone as well, because he has such a long reach and he puts stops to plays really quickly. And he's kind of a perfect partner for Hanley too, where they just can kind of shut down opponents at times, and you don't have to worry a ton about them. At this point, I worry more about Suter and Miro. And we saw in the first goal, Suter gets hammered on the forecheck, it pops loose and ends up in the back of your net. That's happened way too many times this season, but this is just a nice element. The Stars are one of the worst in terms of getting production from their back end. I think they're bottom 3 in the league. But the last time I checked, they were, their points percentage, I think it was 21% from their defense, which I think the only team that was worse was Chicago, a rebuilding Chicago team. And that's just not going to cut it. It's not going to cut it. They need more. And unfortunately, they just don't really have the personnel to kind of breed that. You have somebody in Lundqvist, but at this point, he's watching most nights, and who knows how long this is going to last. And as much as he probably deserves more playing time than Hanley, they trust Hanley more. Hanley plays in the last 5 minutes of close games. Hanley plays in the last 10 minutes of a period. Lundqvist at times, I mean, after the second TV timeout, he's done. They don't play him, and they've been playing a lot of tight games. So, what's the point of having him in the lineup too if you're not going to play him down the stretch? It feels almost like a wasted slot sometimes. And look, I get it. They want to see more out of him. And I think it's fair to some degree that he sat for 3 games. But he needs to find a rhythm too, and you got to play him more. Hanley's a bit different at this point. Hanley can be in and out of the lineup. Lundqvist needs to play, man. He's just played over 100 games in the National Hockey League. Otherwise, like it's either time to move off and just just be done with it. And look, I'm not as high on Lundqvist as others, but I would still like to see him play because I think he has some potential to be valuable. But the way they're kind of deploying him right now, he's just not a valuable asset. And at some point, you got to live with that. You got to live with that. He's not going to be a Harley or a Miro. He's just not. That's not his ceiling. The expectations got to have to come down. At some point, I don't know what they want to see out of him. They've just mentioned he needs more. And what that more is to be determined at this point. But either way, a great offensive display from the back end. 7 combined points against the Red Wings. They could use that more going forward. Well, let's jump into now a much needed rest. It's been a very long and tough stretch, but the Stars get 2 days to decompress, and they take on one of the worst teams in the NHL on Friday. And let's go over this rest in just a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's what brings home the winning trophy. It is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. So the Stars get a couple of days off now before they have to take on the Ottawa Senators upcoming on Friday night. And, of course, Ottawa's coming in at one of the worst records in all of the NHL. They're at the basement. So a very gettable game for Dallas. And I mentioned yesterday, too, and I would love for you to go take a listen to that episode 2, just kind of on where I'm standing with the whole Otter situation and kind of the panic meter. I feel like on some Stars teams, I just tried to ease some of those worries. But first, before we touch a bit more on the Senators too, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today, 24/7, covering the top sports stories with local experts on Locked On, plus all the national shows with every sports league. So go to Locked On Sports Today. Go ahead and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. A lot of great work we're doing. And shout out to all you everydayers as well that are coming on here and listen to me ramble every single day. Much, much appreciated. But, a good stretch here now for the Stars, where they got some very beatable opponents. They got Seattle upcoming on Monday. Canucks are going to be a tough fight on Thursday. I'm going home for Christmas here at the end of the week, so I'll be at one of the games. I might be at both, which I'm excited about. I think I'll definitely go to the Seattle game on Monday. I'm excited to take in a Stars game in person. I'm just excited to be home and be back in Dallas for a few days over our Christmas break. So, should be fun to take in a game in person since I've only been to one. And last time they gave a shellacking to the Minnesota Wild. But it was just a solid effort is kind of my word for the day in the game last night, because sometimes just these really tough stretches of play can kind of elongate. And you have to give Dallas some credit, which I touched on yesterday too, they've been playing bad, but they were in a lot of the fights. They were in a lot of the games, and they still found a way to get some points out of it. And and they're still trying to find their game. And I saw someone mentioned also about their identity, and I think that's a great point. I can't put a pulse or get my fingers on what the Stars' identity is, and I don't know if they are. Last year I would say they're just a tough team to play. Like, they're tough on most nights. You're not going to get out of Dallas, or you're not going to get out of a game playing the Stars easily. They haven't been that tough to play this year. They certainly haven't. And I think that's a great point. What is their identity, and when is they're going to find it? And they just haven't played consistent enough. It's been very up and down, which kind of gives some memories of a few years ago too, like kind of 2020, 2019, where Stars just had this up and down play. And last year they were able to even it out, and be in the top 3 of the Central Division for a while. They are first place in the Central Division, by the way. As I'm recording this, Calgary is up 5-3 on Colorado heading into the second. Who knows if they hold on to that? But if they do, Stars will be in first place, which is crazy, pretty crazy after dropping to third last night, and they'll be right back up there. Maybe that's just kind of the story of the year, right? We're looking for more, and maybe they're just not going to have it, but they're still going to be in the mix. I don't think they've played their best hockey though, but I mean, no stretch. And I think there's going to be a lot of things that are going to happen between December and like March. Of course there is. There's going to be like 40 games, and I think there's going to be some new faces that get brought in, and they certainly need some help. So we'll probably get into that a bit more in the next few days, so we have some downtime. Also, we'll certainly hammer some Texas Stars talk, and Logan Stankov and Maverick Bourque just lighting up the AHL. Some possible defensemen that the Stars should be looking at and be in the market for as well, while we have some time to just kind of decompress, enjoy the win too, and then we'll hop back on it on Friday nights against the Senators. All righty. Want to thank all you everydayers out there for joining me every day and just being a fan here of Locked On Stars, your team every single day. Always a pleasure. Great feedback yesterday on the kind of panic button. I thought everybody had really, really great observations and very fair points. Even if you disagree with me, look, as I mentioned, I'm a pretty positive person at the end of the day, but Stars need fixes, and they got to find some solutions. And maybe yesterday was a step in the right direction. All righty. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday nights. I'll be with you tomorrow and Thursday and the next day, while we have a few days off before we get back to Stars hockey. Anyways, have a wonderful day, and I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we will see you tomorrow. So long, Stars fans.